Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of Old School, New World, The Life of an Entrepreneur. It's my distinct honor to be hosting my favorite financial advisor, Ryan Henderson. He has been a financial advisor with Edward Jones for 17 years and has been able to help individuals, small businesses in the GTA and across Canada. Now, I can tell you that his golf game is much better than mine, and he does not eat breakfast in the morning. Welcome, Ryan Henderson. Such a pleasure to have you with us, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Before we sort of jump in, I wanted to tell our audience, how I met you and how sort of, in our businesses, we do a lot of referral-based business.
Right.
And so, I love our story about how we met first off, and I met through your mother-in-law, Fran. Shout out to Fran. How are you? And so, of course, she came to see me 12 or 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then over time, I kept in touch with her. I actually went to see her at her home that she sold. I can count on one hand how many clients and friends I've actually gone to their home for some reason. And Fran has the honor of being on that list. And then she introduced me to you and said, hey, you should talk to my son-in-law and, of course, Gia, your wife, her mom. Mm-hmm. So we started to talk a little bit. You allowed me to help in your mortgage financing, and we started there. So we started in a client relationship, turned into a friend relationship. And during that friendship piece, I was investing myself in self-directed with TD. Yeah. And I said, hey, Ryan, I'm getting tired of this. This is not my area of expertise. Yeah. Why don't you have a look at this? And, probably a couple months later, we moved it all over. And I've been tickled pink with everything we've been doing. And now that transition, that friendship is also a referral-based relationship. Right. Where we help each other's clients out. So tell our audience, I appreciate you a great deal. I know the value you bring to what I need because it's not my area of expertise, but tell our audience, a little bit about you've been doing this 17 years, a little bit of the background, how you decided to get into it. And maybe, as you say that, what is your superpower?
Oh gosh, my superpower. Yeah, we did meet through my mother-in-law.
Yes.
I know why you went to her house because she's quite persuasive. And so she has a way of getting people to do exactly what she needs. And I'm sure that you helped her out.
She was just very sweet person
great.
For sure.
I guess what transpired was then, my wife and I needed lending and mortgages mm-hmm. and whatnot. And, you pick the lowest hanging fruit. We know this guy, Mike Diaz. And
the lowest fruit is the juiciest, by the way.
Well, yeah. The ripest, we'll say.
Well, okay, fair.
Wealth management, we're often advising people on the investment side, but, there's a lot of financial planning that goes on with that. And it's a natural lead to people are often and always asking me about the lending they have, the mortgages they have, that sort of thing. And I can't count how many times I'm, might not know the answer, might not know the products, might not know exactly what's going on. And I'm, reach for the phone, and you've always been able to, answer the question. And in a lot of cases, you've been able to talk to some of the clients and whatnot. Yeah. And I'm sure that you've done business with some of the clients, some of the people we work with. Yeah. And so it's really grown organically over time. And, we really value that we have you on speed dial for anything.
Yeah, and vice versa, for sure.
Yeah, actually, that does remind me, I do have a couple questions for you after this.
Okay, yes, for sure. We can introduce the questions into it, but it's up to you on that.
They're not my own questions. They're questions from clients and prospective clients.
Yeah, I would love to shoot the shit on that for sure.
But then your question about what is my superpower?
Yes.
I would say I definitely do not have a superpower.
Don't be so humble.
But the one superpower, kind of wonder of the world that I think about and really kind of got me into the business I'm in and really captured my imagination is, I think it was Albert Einstein talks about compound interest as the eighth wonder of the world. Then he says something about those who understand it get the rewards and those who don't, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or those who understand it earn it and those who don't pay it. That idea of compound interest, and I see it in my practice, see it in my business, mm-hmm. and see it with clients that we help, is just like a wonderful thing that's very, very slow at first, as if you're pushing like a rock uphill. Yeah. And then there's always a point where you reach the crest, and then what ends up happening is you're really chasing it down the hill. And that rock is not a rock, it's a snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have trouble keeping up with it. It really is a wonder, and it's a bit of a superpower, but it's not my superpower.
I guess, you could see your superpower is like Superman. You have X-ray vision. You can sort of see the importance of compounding interest effect, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I think that's pretty
financial advisor superhero.
right. Hey, man, the cape, I know what I'm going to be for Halloween in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
It's funny you talk about compounding interest. There's a great book that I read a few years back called The Compound Effect. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the momentum that's created, or you described. It can be on, your personal, professional level, right? So in terms of continuing to do something over and over again, and that compounding effect. And in the book, it references momentum as Mr. Mo.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Okay.
So Mr. Mo gets going like that snowball. Mm-hmm. And then, good luck, get out of the way. And I've experienced that as well, working closely with you. It's not about timing the market, it's about staying in the market.
The vast majority of people's success with investing and the wealth that they build, despite what you might see on social media and wherever you're watching things, is, most wealth is built slowly over time, is the honest truth. Mm-hmm. That's not exciting. It's hard to post a 30-second TikTok about it. But, in my own practice, we always say it, myself and Ben, the admin I've been working with for the last 16 years.
Oh, you've known Ben that long? I didn't know the relationship was that long. Great.
We started together after I'd been in the business 1 year.
Good for you.
So it was January 2009.
Shout out to Ben. Hey, Ben.
Working.
How you doing?
But we refer to a number of our clients as, accidental millionaires. And these are people who, through their cast iron constitutions, accumulated wealth slowly but regularly over time. And they end up with, big piles of money that they, have a lot of security in their life later in life. And they have a lot of questions and answers that they need to do about, like, what do they want to happen to their money? And that sort of thing. And it's funny to me that it's often the little old ladies who just stay the course. They're not looking at their statements or their investments. They're not jumping on trends. They're sticking with it. They sort of understand as time goes by, and they get that wisdom and, knowledge that, this too shall pass in many cases. I think a lot of younger investors or more novice investors will often feel like the more they do, the better.
And that's not always the case.
It's often exactly the opposite of what you should do.
Right.
I would say more wealth has been destroyed by people trying to time markets or jump on trends than anything else. It's kind of like, in life, eat well and exercise. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very broad mantra, but like if you do that, eat well and exercise, find a way to move every day, eat good foods, but focus on quality, you're halfway there. You're 80% of the way there, probably.
Yeah. 80% is what you eat and 20% exercise.
Yeah.
So it's an 80-20 rule, which applies to a lot of things for sure.
So if you're eating well and exercise, I mean, the investment world, if you're diversified and focusing on quality, staying the course, adding regularly, not, wildly swinging to cash and then back into investments, not jumping on trends, just sticking the course, building a habit. That's how you build wealth. Certainly there are people who build wealth suddenly, overnight. Or in very short periods.
There are people who win the lottery.
And we pay a lot of attention to those people. But, like I said, the vast majority of wealth is built slowly over time.
Right. It's like the turtle and the hare, slow and steady wins the race. And if, the other analogy is if you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go with others.
Right.
Right. So it's very much something similar you can apply to the wealth management investment world. Is there buckets in your business where here's a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old coming in, have a little bit of money. Of course, I know how you do your things. You'll know your client, you go through that, find out what their goals are. But is there something, because you've been doing it so long, that you already see, okay, this person, I get a feel for them. Let me find out if my feel is right by asking them ABC questions? Or is it really just each person is unique when you're meeting with them?
I mean, that's an interesting question. It's certainly stages of life. And people typically move through those stages. They go from their early investing years. People often go through a period of time where there's a lot of things pulling at them when they have families. Sometimes there's children. They have mortgages. They have debts. They're not in their higher income earning years. And so they have a lot of priorities pulling them a bunch of different directions. And then we often see people when they get into their 40s or 50s, they reach a stage of life where some of those priorities sort of lessen. But at that moment, they're in a time where they're in their higher income and savings years. And they can really make a lot of hay while the sun shines. Mm-hmm. And so there are definitely stages of life. But like the most interesting thing about my job, and I really do love my work, it's not that exciting to talk about. I wouldn't really, if you're a superhero, maybe. But my work is really quite interesting because day after day, time after time, week after week, always surprised by how unique everybody's situation is.
Okay.
Every single family, every single person, you might walk into the, initial prospective client meeting or just the introductory consultation. The young person saving, wants to buy a house. There's like a few things, and a lot of that is very normal. But then there's, but I have this thing. I have this. There's this family issue, or there's this extra thing to think about or be concerned about.
Yeah.
And so it's endlessly fascinating. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy my job, because, money is really quite personal. And when we get talking about it, and when I learn what's important to my clients,
you have to be able, one, to be authentic and genuine when you're introducing that conversation, because money talk is very like taboo. Some people are very like, oh, I don't want to share all this information because I want you to think I'm successful, and they might be amazingly successful, but internally they feel maybe I haven't, not enough, right? So you're right. The conversations are really good to have, but it takes time to build on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you have a financial advisor or somebody that you want to give you good advice, you have to sort of disclose and tell them what you're worried about, what's important to you, how much you earn, how much debt you have, all of those things. And they'll often ask to see investment statements and, all that kind of stuff. And the more information you give them, the better they can help you. Similar to a relationship with a doctor. I mean, think about the things your doctor knows about you.
Oh, I know. Let's not go there. I just saw Dr. Gelkoff. Shout out to you. But of course, you share things that you typically wouldn't. Maybe your wife doesn't even know the things you tell your doctor.
Very often that's true. I don't want to know what you talked with your doctor about.
That's not what we're doing this here for today.
But if you're going to see a financial advisor, you have somebody you work with. I mean, a lot of people do it themselves, do it on their own. That's fine. But if you enlist somebody to partner with you, you have to sort of bring them on board and you let them inside your mind and inside your finances. I mean, that's a very important piece, but I don't feel shy about that in any way.
Good.
I would say maybe I forget that people might feel shy about it.
Right.
Because one of the first things I'm going to ask you if you come in for a consultation is, what do you do?
Yep.
How much do you earn?
Yep.
How much debt do you have? Tell me about your family. I'll just ask all the questions that are going to be relevant to getting good advice. Right?
And we do the same on my side of the balance sheet. You have to do that. Get a client coming in, referred. You need to ask them what they do, how much they earn, what have they set aside. But these are things, we're fortunate, you and I, we've been doing it a long time. So we have the confidence. It's almost second nature talking about money. You're on the asset side of the balance sheet. I'm on the liability side of the asset sheet, but they still, they're siblings, right? On both sides.
It's funny. We've recently renegotiated a mortgage on a rental property that my wife and I own. And it was actually kind of interesting to be on the other side. Your guy, Sean, is, send me your pay stub, send me your T1 journal, send me this, send me that, send me that. And, of course, I understand all the reasons why the underwriters need all that stuff, but here you go, here you go, here you go. And now you become like the doctor,
Yeah, and I'll tell you about too, what's going to be going on too, just to touch on that real brief, is that it's only going to get more tedious. There's going to be more layers, right?
Yeah.
We might jump into this a little later, but with everything with the FinTrack now and AML, and you've been doing this in your business already. It's almost like the mortgage industry is only now starting to do what, financial advisors and folks like yourself have been doing forever.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll touch on that as we go through. One thing I wanted to tell our audience, and it's a little bit about the stages of life, which I love about you. So when we talk about different things, and the relationship Ryan and I have, guys, is I love it because there's no expectation of something back and forth. I say we have a referral relationship, we do, but it's always done in such, he mentioned it earlier, organic way. So one of the things I love about Ryan and his attitude about relationships is I said, hey, Ryan, this happened maybe a bit a year ago. We were talking about clients, first-time home buyers. They were getting into the market. They asked me about a financial advisor, and I think they had, X amount of investable dollars after their financing. And I talked to Ryan and I said, hey, Ryan, would you want a referral? They probably will have, 30, 40,000. And lo and behold, and I'm not surprised because he's just so great. He welcomes those types of individuals because you get to grow with them as a financial advisor.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a real issue with the business that I'm in, is it's hard to get good advice. The job title financial advisor is becoming more regulated, but not really. If you go and see a lawyer, you know that they've been called to the bar and they're a member of the law society. If you go to see an accountant, you know they're a CPA. But the term financial advisor can be and has been pretty broad. You could go see a financial advisor who's a relatively new employee at a bank, whose sole job is to get you a credit card, get you a mortgage.
Well, they tried but they tried to sell you. I wouldn't, I've learned, and I was a banker for 17 years. Now, like if I was going to talk to my younger self, say, don't get that advice from that financial advisor who just started in the role.
Yeah.
I would be a bit concerned about that.
But the financial advisors who are, have access to, more broad product, or the universe investments aren't selling a particular product, aren't tied to a particular investment product.
Right.
They are in quite big demand. Unfortunately, the reality is if you don't have liquid investment assets, it's hard to get a chance to speak to some of these financial advisors from full service brokerage firms or whatnot who are, certified financial planners, et cetera, et cetera. So
like yourself?
Yes.
Yes, of course, of course.
But I mean, the truth is we don't take every client. And so a lot of the people that you ask me to speak with, I'm very happy to speak with them because I want to find out about them and just, naturally curious.
Yeah.
But I also know that it's a bit of a tough world out there to sort it out if you're not well versed.
Right.
And I'll find out, I'll do my due diligence, learn about them, understand what's important to them, learn about their key financial circumstances. And then it equips me to be able to point them in the right direction. Sometimes it's somebody that we'll take on as new client. We only want to take on 6 or 8 new clients every year, new households. And, mostly they have over $500,000 or sometimes it's millions or multiples of millions.
Right.
So somebody with like $40,000 or $30,000 saved up wondering what the right thing to do is, it is difficult to get that advice.
Right.
I mean, we do sometimes take clients with less than 500. It all is circumstantial. But there's also people that I can point to, even inside of Edward Jones or outside, where I can point people the right direction where others might have more capacity and that sort of thing. But I just feel like it's tough for especially young people who are starting the journey to start right. I mean, it's not tough for everybody. Right. Literally everything that we do as financial advisors, financial planners, none of it is very clever. It's just a lot of people take an interest in it. They understand TFSAs, RSPs. They understand this new first home savers account. They understand what an ETF is or a mutual fund or a stock or a bond, and they take an interest in it.
Right.
And those people who take an interest, they can find all the information they need and they can invest and they can do all that kind of stuff for very low cost. But what we find is, I don't know the number, but it's definitely more than half the people, half Canadians, they want somebody to partner with, especially as they move through life and the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. That sense of responsibility over, I don't want to mess up my family's nest egg.
Right.
Is a big weight for a lot of people. They want somebody to partner with. If the nest egg isn't, millions of dollars or
they almost feel like less. Oh man, what?
It's hard to get the advice. It really is, and that's a major issue I think in Canada. There's a great companies out there, discount brokers, robo advisors. There's companies and there's sources where they can get investments and they can get good advice. But I think there's a real craving in this world for people to. My experience, it's anecdotal, but my experience is people really want to partner with somebody who knows them and understands them and can really guide them that way. And it's I only have capacity. I'm like, it's just in my office right now, we are considering.
Yeah, you're building a team. If I remember us chatting.
Yeah, I mean, there's another advisor in our office who came from one of the banks and is building his practice and currently has more capacity than we do. But we deal with, I think it's 180 families, which is a lot of families to know and understand really understand everything. And we're great at note taking. We have like a great customer relationship model.
You know how much I love the CRM.
Yeah, we talk about that. But at the end of the day, I only have so much capacity. I don't want to work 18 hours a day. I don't want to work weekends. I'm at a stage in my life, I've got young kids and whatnot. When I'm at work, I want to work hard, but I want to be able to do a good job for the clients we have. Right. And for that reason, Ben and I have explicitly said we are not taking more than 6 or 8 new households this year.
You talked about your CRM. My last guest, Michael Beckett, shout out to you. We talked about having a process. It's important to have a process. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do you have a process? And you've been there trying to analyze and figure out, okay, this is our capacity, but what is your process when you want to add someone on or something of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, some of it is regulatory. Taking notes about our client interactions is not an optional thing in our world any longer.
Right.
It's a requirement from our regulators.
Okay.
And so we have to take notes and we have to prove that we know our client and we have to record those details.
Okay.
And we have to also prove now that we know the product that we're recommending, so.
Oh, wow. Like an assessment product form, perhaps.
No, I mean, you might come to me and say, hey, Ryan, I want to buy XYZ stock.
Yeah.
If it's not a company that Edward Jones publishes an opinion on or a third party that we subscribe to publishes an opinion on, if it's not something that, I can reasonably prove to a regulator that I've done some due diligence and there's like some research on it that it's an appropriate investment for you, I'm not going to take that order.
But do some advisors would they risk it and take that order because they're needing the money or they're not following their fiduciary duty?
Fiduciary?
Thank you, man. I could never pronounce that word. Are there people that take that order?
I mean, I would suppose yes, but there's compliance departments for all financial advisors who have the same regulator, CIRO.
I was going to ask you, is that the regulators?
Yeah. Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization.
Okay. And what's the acronym for that?
CIRO now. It used to be IROC.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's CIRO. Is that what it's?
CIRO.
CIRO. Got you.
They would regulate companies like Edward Jones. They would regulate all the banks. They own a full service brokerage, like the CIBC Wood Gundy or the RBC, Dominion Securities, Manulife Securities. They all have the regulator CIRO. They're all members of the CIPF.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, our process is always when we have a new prospective client or somebody who wants to deal with us is just to have an introductory consultation and just have a conversation. I always give an hour for that.
Right.
I take copious notes. Good. I try to let people talk more than I do the talking.
Copious is a big word, so thanks for teaching.
Did I say copious?
Yes, I love it.
Wow.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I cut you off. I love it.
At the end of that 1 hour conversation, we usually know what's the big driving concern.
Right.
We know about the person's or their family's financial circumstances, and we know enough to begin to point them in the right direction. Then at that point, we want to review financial statements.
Right.
Get them to source more information or get a little bit more specific information. Then we can usually have enough information to begin building out the bare bones of a financial plan going from there. And I mean, usually at that point, that's an inflection point where they'll consider becoming a client of Edward Jones and partnering with myself and Ben. In many cases, it doesn't make sense.
Right. And sometimes you have to say no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're doing them a service by, just being straightforward and honest.
Yeah. I mean, Edward Jones is a full service brokerage. People pay. And, the investments, I would say that you don't want to use a full service broker if you're going to do all the investments and picking and choosing yourself and whatnot, because you can do that for very low cost. In fact, I would say the cost of the investment portion of the relationship is very minuscule. What you pay for is the financial planning, the financial advice, the ongoing partnership, the accountability, all that kind of stuff is what you're paying for as you go.
So let's pivot here a little bit. We've talked about the process and this life stages, the importance of reaching out to the right financial advisor. Let's pivot a bit to the overall market. The TSX, I think it's still over 24,000. I haven't checked in the last day or two. Dow Jones is in record territory. Talk to us about your thoughts on, and I'm not asking you to look at a crystal ball or anything, but, there's different theories. We know that on my side, rates are coming down, but equities are going up. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, it's always interesting.
Yeah.
Markets are at or near all-time highs. Here we are, October the 18th, 2024.
It's wild.
Equity markets have been on a trajectory that has been upwards probably since about October 2022.
Wow.
The interesting thing about that is there's been very little volatility.
I noticed that.
It's been a steady climb. There was a Monday in August, I don't remember exactly when, where there was a little bit of a flutter in the markets.
Probably like 300 points, I think I saw, or something like that.
But otherwise, it's been a very slow and steady climb.
Yeah.
And what we know is that's not normal.
Okay.
Markets are more volatile usually on average than they have been in the last 18 or 20 months or whatever.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can't make predictions.
No, I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm not asking you to.
If I'm predicting is that I will predict that at some point in the future, we'll return to more volatility. I mean, that's how you get to an average amount of volatility is you spend some time below it, you spend some time above it.
Right.
We know that markets go up.
They also
come down from time to time. I don't know the stats off the top, but we see a 20 or 25% correction in the market, a drop of 20-25%.
Is there a timeline over where you guys are projecting that, or Edward Jones and the research teams?
I mean, no, I can't predict what's going to happen in the markets.
Right. But is the research team at Edward Jones, is that information you can share even?
I mean, we have market strategists, and I would fall short of making like economic predictions,
Right,
but I
right.
do know, like looking with a rear view mirror, that
Yep.
we see a 20 or 25% drop in the stock market
Okay.
once every 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
You can't set your watch to it. There's been periods where it's gone longer, but without that.
Okay.
But that's a pretty normal and regular occurrence that we see markets come down more than 20% on a regular basis.
Okay.
We see markets come down usually more than 10%. I don't know, remember the numbers. Once every 1.3 years or something.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold you to it. It might have been 1.2, but that's okay.
Yeah,
No, I-
yeah. But about every year you see a
Right.
10% drop in the market.
Right.
We see a 5% drop in the market, usually 2 to 3 times a year. That's very normal. And so it's very easy for me to get up here and say, I predict that markets will go down. But you will not hear me predict when
Right.
or how or why.
Right.
I just don't know. The major thing I've learned is that I don't need to know. I do not need to know. I started in this job in December of 2007,
Wow.
December the 14th.
Yeah.
That was when I was licensed.
Yep. Financial crisis happened shortly thereafter.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that what happened in 2008 into 2009 was a very dramatic time with equity markets. I mean,
Yes.
some equity markets went down more than 50 or 60%.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fear in the market and whatnot. And, I was investing long-term serious money for people in December of 2007.
Wow.
I was doing it in January, February, March, April of 2008, all the way up. My memory serves as really around September where things started to wobble.
Of 08.
Of 08.
Yeah.
And then into March of 09. And then there's a very fearful period coming out of that because people thought we were going to turn around and go back down.
Yeah.
A lot of people were quite fearful that they had just invested money they had found or inherited or proceeds from the sale of a home or, their long-term investments. They'd started this relationship with this young, at the time, financial advisor, and the investments went straight down to start. I thought my job was to lose money for people for the first year.
No, fair. I think you might have done this, but I'm sure you called all of those people, even when the portfolios went down. Was that what you did? I'm guessing here.
We had a lot of very real conversations.
Good. Because that's the thing. People tend to only call you, like advisors or mortgage brokers, when things are really rosy. But you never hear the phone ring when things are not rosy.
Yeah.
And that's when you really should be picking up the phone.
Well, there was a lot of fear. Since that time, the only time where we saw fear like that or even approaching that was at the beginning of the pandemic. But that was a very short-lived period.
Right. I give my brother terrible advice. He does his mutual funds. I don't know, man. I would sell it. I don't know if he did. He talked to his bank financial advisor.
Yeah.
So
I mean, selling to cash is often the wrong thing to do unless you need cash or you have short-term needs with your money.
Right.
But
right.
the people that invested money and we started these long-term relationships with their serious long-term money that they couldn't afford to lose over time and they needed to be there. It was like fundamentally important.
Yes.
Many of those people are still clients today, and
no surprise.
does it matter if they invested in December 2007 or whatnot? I mean, it might matter for a couple points here or there, but the result, their ability to have their investments provide for them and have that peace of mind and security and that they can take care of their family is, those people have very good experiences. And it's not because of the timing on when they chose their investments or picked their investments. I mean, we bias towards quality. We stick to the rules of diversification. There's nothing clever that we do.
Right. But you're not reinventing the wheel.
Because it's been 15 years or 17 years or whatever since that time.
Yeah.
They're in a very good position and they're very thankful that, they stuck with it.
And I'm sure it's because of the advice you gave them as well, right? Even though you're a new person starting your career, you felt for them because like you said, you thought you were in the business to take money and lose it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you felt a sense of responsibility. Yeah. We all do. Anyone who's passionate about doing what they do cares about what happens to the person they're helping and serving. It's almost like a connection, right?
With hindsight, you would look at us today so far removed from it and say, what a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah,
Next time all these great quality companies go down 50%, I wish I had bought, or I wish I was old enough to have money to have bought or whatnot. But those opportunities will present themselves again. I don't think it's a great thing if you have money that you don't need for the long term to leave it on the sidelines because you're missing opportunities. But as markets fluctuate, that creates opportunities. Right. And the next thing that causes the markets to come down dramatically will definitely have very terrible headlines associated with it. It'll be front page every day, and it'll be this time is different. I can't speculate as about what it is, but the real truth is it'll be something that is a surprise.
Okay.
But that's what causes the fear in the market.
Yeah.
it's something that we're not likely talking about today.
Right.
I mean, our world can lurch from one calamity to another.
Oh, I know.
But a lot of people will say, is the election south of the border going to have a big impact on the market? The wars that we see overseas, is that going to have a big impact on the market? And a lot of that stuff is sort of known. But the thing that causes markets to fluctuate dramatically on the downside, especially, are surprises. A pandemic coming out of nowhere.
Right.
Discovery of these bad debts inside of investment products, which really spurned the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So the next big surprise is coming. When it's coming, don't know. Mm-hmm. What it's going to be, don't know. That's the point of it. It's a surprise.
Right.
What should you do? Just live your life, save money regularly, buy diversified investment products, and you will have opportunities in the future to add to it.
Right.
If you're on the other side of the coin where you're drawing money out, make sure you have enough money in safe and secure investments or safe, secure spots for all your short-term needs so you can withstand that. I mean, it's fairly basic, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, and I think that it's that conversation piece that's important so you can identify, and that's why it's important to be completely honest and straightforward. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about TD Bank and this $3 billion AML. We talked about it briefly. I wanted to just talk about it. Obviously, it's only affected their U.S. operations. But do you see any fall over in terms of the regulators here in Canada? Will they now have their ears open, eyes open wider? We already have AML introduced now just last week into the mortgage industry. You've been doing it forever. Yeah. Do you see anything maybe happening with TD? What's your thoughts on that? Any insight to provide our listeners on what just happened with TD Bank?
Well, they're in the news. And if you open the business section of the newspaper, almost every day now, it's an article about TD Bank. And then an article about TD Bank, and then an article about TD Bank. And the share price, is suffering, especially relative to some of the other banks that aren't getting some of the same attention. Right. So what's happened is they pled guilty to criminal charges in the United States to the tune of $3.09 billion. Which is a lot of money.
Billion.
I'm not familiar with the case. I don't follow it. I'm not the analyst on the stock.
Of course.
But, we have clients that own TD Bank. It's a big Canadian company that's top of everybody's mind.
Yep.
Where it's going from there, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to give specific advice about whether to buy a stock or not to buy a stock. Mm-hmm. But regulation is important. And
sure is.
Companies like TD Bank, especially companies going to the U.S., have to be very mindful of regulation. In the U.S., the banking industry is far different than it is in Canada.
Yep.
There's many thousands of banks. You and I could go start a bank in the United States.
You want to? Let's go do it. Ted, you want to join us?
We would be subject to regulation.
Of course.
And TD Bank is a big Canadian bank, and maybe OSFI or FinTrack or whatnot, the Canadian regulators have relationships with the banks and that sort of thing. But in the U.S., they have a bit of a different culture around regulation, which I think is a good thing. If you're not investing enough in compliance and oversight and managing and reducing the risk of money laundering and just nefarious actors in your business, you should be held responsible, and it's a responsibility of the bank.
I was reading an article where they were growing their business. They had to spend X amount of money on the compliance operations side because they were growing. They had to keep up with what was happening. Mm-hmm. And I guess the boys in the Ivory Tower said, let's not spend.
Yeah, my understanding is the issue is executives or senior people in the bank intentionally or knowingly not
taking action to support the system.
Spending enough to support their compliance requirement. They have enough compliance oversight or enough investment in that part of overseeing and watching for nefarious actors in their branches and other places for, 1 million accounts. Right. But they want to grow to 3 million accounts, but they're still only going to spend enough for 1 million accounts.
Of course.
But yeah, I don't want to get into specifics.
No, I just wanted to bring that, highlight that, because it's impacting my business and all broker owners. Yeah. And we're going to be responsible for compliance, right? So as a broker owner or the principal broker who's looking after that, there's certain documentation that this is what we've talked about offline, the P forms, politically exposed person. Yeah. If I have a client, first-time home buyer, why do you think I'm a politically exposed? So you have to have those conversations, right?
Yeah, are you a Nigerian prince or are you related to a Nigerian prince?
Right, and there's all kinds of different screening now that's involved in this. So we have, through the platform we're using, through our brokerage, they've incorporated it to make it a bit easier to supply the documentation. So, but it's important to still monitor that.
I will say this about that before you move on.
Yeah, of course.
The compliance and the regulation and the oversight
Yeah.
On our day-to-day, it feels a little bit like a pain in the butt a lot of the time. Dotting the I's, crossing the T's, doing this, doing that, getting documents from customers or clients and all that kind of stuff. But strong compliance and strong regulation is a net benefit. It's a great thing for customers and for ourselves, professionals in the business.
Yes.
And it might seem silly, but it's hugely important.
I will say this, back in my beginning days, I was never a fan of this compliance stuff. But obviously, as I progressed and got into what I'm doing now, I think compliance helps build relationships. Because I've changed, even when I'm asking a client, I'm talking to someone, and even if it's a new one, I'll say something like, with your permission, I'll do ABC. Right. But now, the compliance involves consent. It involves understanding of, opening up another door of questions that to be asked. And I think if we take it from the perspective of, yes, it's compliance, but it's also relationship building attached, because someone is just going to have to understand that. But if you're not doing it the right way, if you're not presenting it and being straightforward with them, hey, this is what it is, don't shoot the messenger, but we're going to do this the right way. It's going to help us with the process. Let's not get frustrated. We're not being nosy. We just need to adhere to the new rules.
Yeah, well, we are being nosy, but we're required to be nosy.
Yes, fair enough, fair enough. So before we sign off here, one of the things that I was talking about earlier, it touched my heart. So Ryan and I were talking about me starting my brokerage a year ago and how I was going to start my brokerage, and it was going to be human-centered leadership, done with the traits that we are all born with: support, kindness, compassion, understanding, love, for that matter. And then lo and behold, the great CEO of Edward Jones,
right.
Penny Pennington.
Yeah.
Penny, a shout out to you. We've never met, but what a fabulous, fabulous name. Your parents did an amazing job. Penny Pennington. I just love it. She started something similar about 4 years ago. You told me about this and I was like, wow, really? I had an idea of how I wanted to do my brokerage. And here is a super successful CEO of Edward Jones. And I've heard nothing and read nothing but great things about her. Tell our audience a little bit of what she started in. And she's the one who incorporated the philosophy that Edward Jones now brings under the fold.
Yeah, well, Edward Jones is not just in Canada, of course. They're a very, very big financial firm in the United States.
Right.
I think the entire company manages more than $2 trillion. With a T.
Okay.
All of our clients are individuals and small business owners.
Right.
So that's not institutional money. That's many, many, many millions of families and small business owners across Canada and the United States.
Right.
We don't have a discount brokerage. We don't do a lot of investment banking. We have one single focus, is providing financial advice, full service financial advice to individuals and small business owners. And they've been doing that for more than 100 years now.
Okay.
Penny Pennington is our managing partner.
Oh, I thought, is she not the CEO?
Sorry, Edward Jones is a partnership.
Oh, okay,
so a corporation will have a CEO, but Edward Jones is a partnership.
Okay.
Sort of like, the KPMGs and some of the accounting firms, the big accounting firms, or a law firm, that kind of thing.
I understand, yep.
And so it's a managing partner, CEO, same thing.
Yep.
The firm has been talking for a long time about human-centered complete wealth management.
Right.
And when you were talking about, starting your own brokerage, and you wanted to make sure that you were focusing on people and being human-centered, it's just like,
that covered it. Made me smile, guys. I was obviously starting off just about 8 months ago, this whole new thing. I was, laser focused and wanted to do this. I'd been wanting to build this brokerage, and to hear a super successful individual talking about this with a multi-trillion-dollar company, DNA Lending Group was going to follow that. And it tickled my heart. And the fact that you have someone like yourself who's with Edward Jones, I'm not surprised. And the fact she's doing it, I just wanted to point that out.
You'll have trillions of mortgages in no time, I'm sure.
Well, hey, listen, in due course, my focus is I really want to help and serve not only clients and friends that I've been doing for the longest time, but help agents who are either new or struggling or don't know how to get to the next level or confidence. But that's another time for another podcast. I wanted to thank you, Ryan, so much. This is, my fourth. I don't want to, as you say, I don't want to say exactly which one was the most favorite. But
who's your favorite child?
But
right?
you know what I say. Yeah. Tremendous honor, pleasure to talk about this kind of stuff. If our audience wanted to reach you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm on the internet, but probably the best way to get in touch with me is through you.
Amazing. Okay.
Like I said, I'm always happy to have conversations and do some discovery. And
is there an email if they want to circumvent and just say, hey, Ryan, I heard you on, is there an email?
Ryan.Henderson@edwardjones.com.
Perfect.
You can just Google Ryan Henderson, Edward Jones.
It'll pop up.
You can message me.
Perfect.
But, I regularly, at least once a week, I have meetings with new people who've reached out to me through the internet or other means.
Amazing.
And I'm just happy to meet with people, find out a little bit about what they're doing, what they're concerned about, and I can point you in the right direction at the bare minimum.
Amazing.
I find that when I do this, it still leads to, new business, other ways as we go.
All right,
thanks,
amazing.
Mike. Thanks
Listen,
a lot.
thank you so much, guys. An absolute pleasure again. Please tune in again on November 22nd. We'll have our 5th episode. A dear friend of mine, CEO of Comerex, Joanna Muzzati, will be joining us. Thank you again, guys. Have a fabulous day, and we'll talk again.
Thanks, Mike.